All right, creators, we're excited to have an even more interesting guest this week, a new face. Cory, we love you. We had to take a spin. Shane Carberry. Tell us where you're calling in from, Shane.
Dialing in from Tullamore in Ireland, right smack in the middle.
Fuck yeah. If you remember me talking about the whiskey tasting I put together in the course, it was inspired by the tour at Tullamore Distillery.
Very good. It's quite a good tour, all right. It's probably one of the best in the country, I think. I'm a little bit biased, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Hands down. So we want to get in today a bit about, your work at Distillery and the content work you do as well. But Shane is also a life coach, and that is yet another dimension I'm super interested in, and is actually the way that I met Shane.
Yeah, so we actually crossed paths through making YouTube videos and a course that we both did, Part-Time YouTuber Academy, which if anybody's interested in getting started in YouTube, I cannot recommend it enough. It is absolutely excellent. But that's how we ended up crossing paths. And I think the introduction to whiskey and distilleries was me sending you a photo of the distillery one day, and you're like, "Oh my God, you have to come on our podcast."
Yeah. I actually went through the directory of the entire academy, which is thousands of people, and did a
Wow.
search for some of the things that I'm really interested in. And it was when I was realizing we're getting to the point, Ryan and I, that we have enough skill for generic things. And the best advice we need now needs to be specific to our use case, who we are, or what we're working on. So I looked up things like, um, you know, whiskey. And I looked up things like speaking skills. And I looked up my favorite thing, which I wasn't hoping to find anyone for, life coaching. And sent off messages to about 8 or 7 people, and Shane by far had the most same vibe of what we're trying to get at, not just what we're trying to do but why we're trying to do it.
I think it could be rare, all right, to find the person who kind of resonates with you as much as you're kind of hoping for. But yeah, I hope you know it goes both ways. I think obviously you reached out to me, but I think it's only been a few months now, but it's we're in regular contact, and yeah, it's I've definitely bounced ideas off you, and it's been helpful as well. So it's definitely gone both ways for sure.
Your advice has been really, really great. So I will tell you how much I love you later, but the point is taking that step to do the networking, to initiate it. Man, you hear the advice that it's going to pay off well, but holy crap, it so completely does.
It really does, and I think a lot of people hold back in doing that from a fear of coming across as weird or odd or maybe a little bit out there. At least over here in Ireland, I think over in America, you guys are a little bit more, I suppose, open to going up and starting a conversation with people, whereas in Ireland, we're just like, I don't know who they are. I'm sure they're sound, as we'd say, but
But
it's very rare where people reach out. So I think just taking that first step and just saying, "Hi, I'm Shane, I'm Ethan, I'm Ryan." Is difficult, but once you kind of get the reps in and you get the practice in, it actually turns out to be not that big of a deal at all. And okay, yeah, maybe 99 times out of 100, nothing comes from it other than maybe a good conversation, hopefully. But it's that one time where actually, do you know what, that was hugely beneficial. So it's definitely it's a skill worth practicing for sure.
mm. Well, let's give it a shot right now. So I'd like to, have you tell us more about who you are. And Ryan, it's your first time meeting. You might have some good
Yeah.
questions to flesh this out.
All right, so I suppose I'll jump in, start from, I'll probably cover more detail as we get closer to the current time, but I started off in university studying mechanical engineering. And at the time, I thought I wanted to actually get into design engineering. So very, very quickly after I finished university, I ended up working in oil and gas for a while, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was stuck in an office just looking at a computer screen all day. And yes, don't get me wrong, it's challenging, it's engineering, but there was something, there was a part of what I was looking for just not being ticked. So I stuck that out for maybe about 9 months. And then from that point on, I actually moved into the drinks industry from then. So I was maybe about 22 or so, and I'm 35 now, just for context. And I ended up working for Diageo as a subcontractor in a brewery they had down in a little town called Kilkenny here in Ireland, which you may have heard of,
Mm.
Kilkenny beer. Um, and I worked, as I said, subcontracting for them for, it ended up being 2.5 years as a process improvement engineer. And the brewery I was actually working in was closing down. So we were brewing under license by Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser predominantly. And we also did Smithwick's, which is an Irish stout or an ale
Mm-hmm.
actually,
It's
and
like the
Kilkenny.
anti-Guinness, right?
It is, yeah, it is. It's I'm not going to say I prefer it, but if you're in the mood for a good pint of Smittix, it can hit that spot for sure. But because they were closing that brewery down, that actually opened up a lot of opportunities for me in the sense of people were getting redundancy packages and moving on to new roles. And that left gaps while operations were still taking place. And I ended up getting opportunities presented to me that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. So unfortunately, when that brewery closed down, my contract was up. That was time to move on. But the site leader at the time was graceful enough to get me an interview for Guinness. So again, under contract, but I ended up working up in the Guinness brewery again as a process improvement engineer for about 12 months. And at that stage then, it was a little bit of a crossroads in my life. I was about maybe 25, I think, at this stage, 24, 25. Maybe even 26. And everybody always says when you're that age and you have no commitments to go traveling. So my girlfriend at the time, she wanted to relocate to Canada and she actually moved across before me. But I was like, if everybody says you should do it, let's give it a go. So I moved over to Calgary up in Alberta.
I got to ask you right there, though, Canada, of all the places in the world, to an American, that is the most boring thing you could possibly think of. How did that connect where your girlfriend was like, could we go to Canada?
So we actually had two friends who we went to university with, who we were quite close with, who had relocated to Calgary. We've no idea how they ended up choosing Calgary. Now, I will say the visa process for people in Ireland under the age of 25 to get it's called a working holiday visa, is actually quite streamlined. So it's actually very, very easy to get a visa to go over for a couple of years. That's potentially why they chose Canada. Why Calgary? I don't know. But I ended up falling in love with the city, but I took it as a career break. And at the time, I had actually, in the years before that, lost quite a substantial amount of weight and ended up getting into personal training and health and fitness. And so actually, that was a good time of any to get out of the drinks industry for a while, get out of engineering and just see if I want to be a personal trainer. And I ended up getting a placement in a facility where they were working with high-level athletes, but also had a coaching development program. And that's how I got into the coaching side of things. So after I was a year and a couple of months there, very, very quickly realized that actually long-term, the fitness industry isn't one that I wanted to work in. Hugely passionate about it, but probably more as a hobby than anything else. But what definitely came out of it was helping people make their goals a reality was something that I really, really enjoyed. So when I came back to Ireland at that stage, I was lucky enough to get into Tullamore Dew. Now, that's actually owned by a parent company called William Grant and Sons. And then that'll be 8 years ago this summer. And in that length of time, I've gone from a team member working in their bottling hall to running their packaging facility here in Tullamore to where I'm the distillery's operations manager now. And I've been in this role for about 3 years. And actually, it's good timing now that we're actually having this call now, because if we were to have it in 2 months' time, I'm actually moving into a different role where I'm taking over the role of learning and development partner for all of our global operations across the world. So excited to get stuck into that. So it's another career change, a little bit of apprehension going into that, but here, listen, we'll give it a go. We'll give it our best shot.
That's pretty wild, starting all the way from a bottling guy.
Yeah, it's again, I was kind of blessed with good luck. Now, don't get me wrong, you put the work in, you put the time in, you push yourself, but because that facility, so the history is actually Tullamore Dew left Tullamore for a long, long time, like I think it was maybe 50 or 60 years. But when William Grant and Sons bought the brand back in 2010, they had decided actually they were going to build a distillery in Tullamore and a packaging facility. So when the packaging facility opened up, I was one of the first of the first team in, let's say. And because it was new, there was a lot of roles then opened up very, very quickly within the first 18 months. And just happened to be that I was one of the people who they liked. So got, again, opportunities presented to me where within, it was maybe 7 or 8 months, moved from team member up to team leader. So I was a team leader for the packaging facility. And things kind of just escalated from there, I guess.
I'm kind of curious if there's any overlap between those extra skills you had that helped you rise up there and the creator skills you have. A little bit of chicken and egg on that one.
Definitely 100%. So it's I actually put a lot of where my life has ended up is through leadership and the challenges that come with leadership, in the sense of you're presented with either a big group of people where you have to try and communicate with people of varying skill levels and knowledge of what we're doing and time served in the company. But also then when you're dealing with one-to-ones and individuals, then you're having to change your communication style and how you're actually interacting and talking with them based on where they are in their career, be that there's somebody who just wants to come in and do a good job and go home, which is fine, or somebody who is aspiring for something more, and you have to approach those very, very differently. And so I firmly believe that the trajectory of my life significantly changed when I took that team leader role, because it put me in a position where I didn't know what I was doing. And to try and do as good of a job as possible, I needed to figure that out as quickly as possible. Because one of the things that will live with me until the day that I die is something that one of the team leaders in the gym I worked in Calgary, where I need to actually go back and ask him pretty much exactly what he said, because I feel like I'm butchering it every time I repeat it. But he had said that as a coach, you absolutely are influencing the people who you're coaching. And the second you don't do that to absolutely better their life, you're not just a bad coach, you're a bad person.
Wow.
And so, okay, coach versus leadership, you can say, okay, are they the same? Are they not? And, you know, there's probably a philosophical question in there somewhere too, but I see them as being one and of the same. And so if I don't give that role my all, well, then I'm not just a bad leader or a bad coach, I'm a bad person, because it can significantly impact somebody's life. So that's how I've always approached it. And I think that has absolutely stood to me for any of the roles I've had since then.
We always talk about, especially when we get, go ahead, Ryan.
No, that is just a really profound way of looking at it. I quite like that, Shane.
I won't lie, Ryan. When he said that, he said that as a throwaway comment. It was actually a guy called Sandro Reich. If anybody wants to look him up, he's definitely worthwhile if you're interested in fitness, and he's actually doing a lot of work with dancers.
Yeah, spell it for us.
SANDRO RAJIC, I believe. And he's based in Calgary. But he said it as a bit of a throwaway comment, and I was just left, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And it's one of those things where, as I said, it will live with me until the day that I die, because it makes so much sense to me. It makes so much sense to me.
In that instance, his coaching changed your life as well.
Absolutely. And I've actually, so we fell out of touch a little bit in the years that followed me coming home from Canada. Just, you know, people's lives kind of diverge. But about maybe 12 or 14 months ago, we actually reconnected and had a number of different coaching calls. So he wanted coaching for me, and I've been struggling with some back issues from a sports-related injury. So we kind of did a little bit of a tit for tat. I'd give him a coaching lesson, then the next week he'd give me kind of a PT lesson virtually. So that we ended up in communication for 5 or 6 months there, and he had as profound an effect on me in those 6 months virtually as he did for the year and a half I was working with him over in Calgary. So he's an incredible person, and I would be forever grateful that our paths cross. He's kind of similar to yourself. He's one of those people where you never meet them unless you throw yourself in the deep end, and you just you don't know what's going to come of it. So I would just recommend people to just, you know, it's terrifying at times, but just jump in. You'll come out unscathed.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice experience. It's one of those things, like, this podcast kind of started with, we did a little bit of everything, and we spend 2 hours talking because I want to spend half the time talking about this is what makes people happy and this is what people are wasting their time on that doesn't really get it. And I had to cut all of that part out so we actually could get through an episode and have a single focus of something. And it really does seem that it's hard to untangle these things, because, like, your leadership skills attached to you rising up at your distillery, which attached to your content creation, which attached to your coaching abilities.
Yeah, it's that as a thought idea is something that I've struggled with for a while, because William Grant & Sons is very much, it's not quite corporate, but it's not a mom and pop outfit either. And so when you go into an organization like that, you've got one of two options. You can kind of go in and kind of do what everybody else is doing and kind of hope you can make a little bit of a difference, or you can go in and just be yourself and try and just live the values that you have within yourself. And absolutely, yes, do your job and do what the business needs you to do. But if you have clarity on what your own personal values are, well, then you can kind of give it a little bit of nuance where actually you're truly bringing yourself to the role and adding something that you're quite passionate about. And people tend to gravitate towards that. And I've always found that if it's a case of you lead by example with that, generally people will meet you where you're kind of trying to have the conversation with them. So if you're going in quite cold, this is what we have to do, and yes, still doing a good job, that's all you'll get back. But if you go in doing the exact same thing, but with your own little flavor on it and actually being true to yourself with it, most people will also meet you at that stage as well. And all of a sudden, then you just start building up this momentum of not just being another cog in a wheel, but trying to add that value into the people who you're working with day to day as well, which for me is probably where the biggest reward is, working with in any of the roles I've had, but definitely within William Grant. It's quite a good company culturally from that point of view. And the site that we have in Tullamore is absolutely excellent from that regard as well. So everybody's very open, transparent, kind of everybody lays everything out, warts and all, and we're just there to help one another. It's a very, very supportive team. The local leadership team is probably only 9 or 10 people from various levels in the organization, and we all have each other's back. And when you're in a situation like that, yes, it takes time to build that. And I don't like blowing smoke up my own backside too much, but I definitely think I've played a big part in that. But when you have that, it just catalyzes more people as they join the organization. Actually, that it just steamrolls, and all of a sudden you've just got this massive momentum. And I think that's the second thing that I think is quite important for anybody who is looking to make an impact in whatever it is that they do, is would that impact last after you leave? Because if it's a case of it's only going to stay around for the length of time you're there, that's positive and that's great, and you need to take that as a win. But your work's probably not finished unless it will continue on after you leave, because then that means you've really instilled the cultures, the behaviors, the way of thinking, the confidence that each individual person has to step into that once you step out of it.
Because it's our March one, I want to make sure we definitely talk about the holidays some, but that's such a good topic right there. I can't not ask. Do you think if there was a company similar to yours that just didn't have a very good culture like you currently do at Tullamore, do you think you'd be able to exert an effect on that? Would that be something you could say, hi, this is something you need, and I can help you with it?
I think the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, comes to mind. I think if there's a willingness to change, absolutely. But if you meet too much resistance and you don't have enough people who are willing to come along with you, I think you're fighting a little bit of a losing battle. And I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Simon Sinek. So he wrote the book
Yep.
Wait But Why. He is of the same opinion, where a lot of people will kind of ask questions in this similar vein. And he's like, absolutely, you can bring anybody you want with you so long as they want to come with you. And if they don't, yes, it's kind of your job to try, especially if you're in a leadership position where they're maybe reporting into you, but you can only do so much. And if I suppose the risk that I have in my head with that is, if you exhaust so much energy in trying to move the unmovable, you end up becoming deflated and exhausted yourself, so that you actually can't do it with the people who are willing to come along with you as well. So it's a fine balance. You do need to kind of push people into potentially places where they're uncomfortable, and there's going to be resistance with that. But if that resistance never lets up, sometimes you kind of need to go, look, this isn't for me, and it's not a cultural fit. And that's not to say that I'm right and they're wrong. It just means that our values are just different and they're not lining up, and yeah, we just need to maybe go different directions.
Okay. Well, getting a bit more to the distillery part of it, I have to ask. Oh my lord, sorry, I'm switching computers here. Just do the entire screen. Will it do that? Which office was yours?
Oh wow. Neither, actually. So that is what you're looking at there. So we technically have 3 distilleries on site. That what you're looking at there is our pot and malt distillery. And if you go to that bottom photo, there's actually 6 stills. So if you go back up to the previous photo you were on there, Ethan, so that's our still floor in the pot and malt distillery. And on the left-hand side of the photo, as we're looking at, there's actually 3 stills there. There's one behind the one you have your mouse over. And therefore our pot still whiskey, and the 3 on the other side are for our malt whiskey, to our single malt whiskey. And those 2 combined with, we also have a grain distillery on site, is what is the blend of Tullamore Dew. Now, something that I think the 2 of you will be very, very interested in is that if you see the in that previous photo, the still that was in the center left is, and if actually it'd be quite helpful if you could go back to that photo.
Sure.
This is definitely something I bring up in every still. So that one that you have your mouse on, you'll see that the neck of that still is actually offset, and that is incredibly rare. But that is actually a nod of the cap back to the original Tullamore Dew distillery, which had this still design. And the reason why they had that is because back in the day in Ireland, you had to pay a tax on the number of stills that you had. It didn't matter if the still was only for 1 litre or 1,000 litres or 10,000 litres. It was the same tax per still. And the building that they built the distillery in had a very low roof, and they were able to get a bigger still in if they offset the neck. And so that's why the neck is offset, because it meant that they could put a bigger still in the building that they had. And so as a bit of a nod of the cap to the original distillery, the engineering team who built our pot and malt distillery decided, actually, do you know what? It would be good to do that here too. So that's why that neck is offset. It caused us a little bit of trouble, actually, because it's a little bit more difficult to work with. But it's nice to have that history built into the new site.
Each one of these looks slightly different.
How does that
They are slightly different.
How does that offset affect the reflux of the still? I imagine that's got to change it somewhat.
It does, yeah. So that still actually has completely separate parameters from all of the rest of them. So as we're looking at it now, the one that Ethan has his mouse over, and the mirror image on the right hand side is our wash still. So the wash that comes from fermenters is roughly at about 10% ABV. It'll go into that wash still. It will come out at 22.5% ABV. Then the ones that are in the back corners, so you can't see the one on the left, and you can kind of just see the neck of the one on the right. That's our wine still, so it'll come out of there at about 55%, and then the spirit still is the ones that's in the front, and it'll come out at about 72% ABV. But in terms of reflux rate, yeah, that's the biggest challenge, Ryan, is the reflux rate on that hot wine still. Requires very particular parameters that you don't really see on any other stills across the world because of that offset neck. So we have it finally worked out now, and it's obviously tightly controlled with engineering automation, but when we were getting that dialed in, it was a massive challenge.
Oh my goodness, I can only imagine that. That's got to be so interesting.
Yeah,
I can smell the mash in my mind.
Yeah, it's quite an odd design. And anybody who knows anything about stills or whiskey, when I give them a bit of a walk around, first they go, "Hold on, what's that?" So that's my favorite bit of the tour, actually, is partially for that history piece of the reason why that's that way is, as I told you a moment ago. So it's one of my favorite little tidbits about the site that very few people actually know.
So it was originally in a different building.
That's a brand new still. So that still was only made in 2014. So it's not the same still. So when we were, the original still is actually in the Kilbeggan distillery, which is about maybe 8 miles from Tullamore, 9 miles from Tullamore.
Close.
But it's significantly smaller. So this is a brand new still built by a company called Forsyths, who are based over in the north of Scotland. So it's brand new, well, relatively brand new compared to the brand. It's brand new. So that was an absolute, just a choice that the company made, saying, actually, do you know what? This would be a nice thing to do for the history of the brand.
Made the brand new one like the old.
Yeah.
I love that heritage part of whiskey. I feel it has it more than any other drink that I know.
Yeah, and the Tullamore Distillery, actually, well, William Grant and Sons, the history of their company, so they're the biggest family-owned business in the drinks industry in the world, if I'm correct. They definitely are the biggest in Scotland. So we're not on the stock exchange. We're not owned by shareholders. We're not publicly trading. It's the family still run the business, who originally launched the Grant's Distillery in Balvenie up in the north of Scotland. And so history is a hugely important thing to them. And that's actually the reason why they brought the distillery back to Tullamore, because they didn't think it was right that it was away from the town. And actually the site that they picked is, from where I'm sitting, it's probably only about maybe 4 miles as the crow flies. But it's in the middle of what we would call a bog. It's essentially a swamp, as maybe you guys would call it, an old peat bog. And because of that, the site is actually the most piled foundation, from a foundation point of view, the most piled site in Europe. There's no site more piled in Europe than the Tullamore Distillery, purely because it was the only site that they could really find that had the size and scale they would need for future expansion. But the problem was it was in a bog, and a bog is, you can't build a building effectively on it without piling. And so that's another claim to fame for sure.
Like, so many connections, just super brief tangent, but like my other close friend, he just started a business selling a new type of piles this year. He got on the mid-30. That's something he wanted to do his whole life. And man.
Small world, eh? Small world.
Yeah. You have to say, you are making me thirsty, and I'm holding another nod to your distillery's love of their history and heritage here.
Yeah, so that we call those a crock. And they're quite scarce actually. So it's nice that you have your hands on one for sure.
Oh, I
So I
couldn't
want to ask
imagine.
you, Shane, are you interested in whiskey? Is that just like a coincidence you ended up at this business instead of another? Do you have any
Um,
Tullamore in your house?
I have quite a lot actually. So we get a product allocation, which means that we can, it's almost for if you have friends or family coming over, you can kind of allow them to taste the portfolio that we have. So I have a press downstairs in our living room, which has got probably not just Tullamore Dew, but a lot of the William Grant and Sons brands. We also own like Hendrix, Glenfiddich, Balvenie.
Mhm.
And I'd say I have maybe 50 or 60 bottles downstairs. I actually have found that as I've gotten a little bit older, and Ryan or Ethan will know this, but I have a 5-month-old, so I don't have a huge amount of time for drinking at the moment. But in the last maybe year or so, I found myself drinking less. But if I was to drink, it definitely would be a whiskey, and it's been that way for well over 10 years now.
So you're that way before you started with this company?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is it
Real
you like
question
about
is,
whiskey?
Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Right.
real question is, were you drinking Tullamore Dew beforehand, or was there a different whiskey that you were choosing to imbibe in?
Oh, Ryan, you put me on the spot here. No, it wouldn't have been Tullamore Dew. It actually would have been well, it would actually depends. I have a few selections. If I was drinking Scotch, it would have been Balvenie 12-year-old Doublewood, which I absolutely adore. But if I was going to stick with Irish, it would be one of two. It would either be the standard 12-year-old Redbreast or Green Spot.
Mm.
Right, both great
Green Spot.
choices.
Yeah. So if any of your listeners haven't tried Green Spot in particular, I think a lot of people have tried Redbreast, but Green Spot is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, very good.
Redbreast has been my addiction. I've bought almost every bottle of Redbreast cask strength in Tennessee.
Right.
I would leave one on the shelf for somebody else, but I was getting and I finally got Cory hooked on it too.
Yeah, no,
So
there's some good the Redbreast selection, the Listu, which I think is how you pronounce it. I probably should know. Is also a really, really nice one as well. I'd recommend that one too.
You're a lot closer to France than I am, so we're gonna have to just trust your pronunciation.
Yeah, I can barely speak English, but yeah, yeah.
How's your Irish?
It's okay. Talking to two Americans, it's excellent. If I'm talking to anybody from Ireland, it's pretty poor.
The fun thing
very
is,
good.
my limited understanding of this is in Dublin, I didn't even hear anyone talk about it. You know, you'd see it written on the manhole covers, but the further you got towards the west, then more and more people actually would speak it, like on the radio. And Tullamore is kind of halfway in between, so it felt this nice border town between the two worlds.
Yeah, the biggest challenge, Ethan, is probably it's obviously this is my own personal opinion, but I don't think it's taught very well in school. So, people who are born and bred in Ireland, and who move to Ireland before the age of I think it's 13, it's mandatory for them to do Irish in it's our equivalent of high school or middle school, and the way it's taught is you're taught to write it before you can read or speak it, which
Ooh.
I think is quite challenging. So there's a lot of people kind of get a distaste for Irish and kind of get put off it, but sometimes later in life, a lot of people will actually come back to Irish and start learning it as an adult. And there's a term for actually people who are fluent in Irish called Gaelgors. So I actually am lucky enough to have two Gaelgors in my friend circle. And so if I'm ever sending them voice notes or anything like that, I will attempt to send it in Irish, but a lot of it is but we get there and they help course correct me. So I think maybe as I get older and I get a little bit more time, it might be something I go back to. But yeah, no, it's my Irish would be poor by most Irish people's standards.
Well, that's beautiful that you still have it part of you and keeping it alive in your way.
Yeah, it is, and as you said, as you go more west, you get more people who are even more areas where their first language would be Irish. Now, don't get me wrong; they would be as fluent as the three of us would be in English, but if they were talking amongst themselves, it would be in Irish. And I think that's beautiful. I would hate to see the language die out, especially given that there's a huge amount of nuance depending on what part of Ireland the Irish is from. So my wife's mum is from the north of Ireland, up in a place called Donegal, and some of the words are completely different for the exact same thing as they would be down in Galway or they might be down in Kerry. And they're, in the grand scheme of the world, not that far away. Like you get from Galway to Donegal in maybe 2.5, 3 hours of a drive. But some of the words are very, very different.
I want to ask, when I speak Japanese, the feeling is so different that my personality has a different lens on it. When you speak English versus Irish, do you feel like you have a slightly different, just attitude because of the language?
Me personally, probably not, because I think I have to think too much about what I'm trying to say. I'm thinking about what I want to say in English and translating it into Irish and then saying that. But I would say Gaeilgeoirs probably do kind of experience the same thing, because they don't have, same, I don't have to think about how to say the words I'm saying now. They can just say them, and so their mind is probably a little bit looser in that regard. So I would probably say yes, but I'll admit I'm guessing there. I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before I just go on a tear of Irish, like St. Patrick's Day questions, do you have anything you want to bring up, Brian?
Actually, kind of stupid, probably St. Patrick's Day question as well, so we can jump into that if you'd like.
Okay. What do you think of Sinead O'Connor?
Legend is too weak of a word to explain what she was. I think she's I'm not sure how much of her history that she had quite a troubled upbringing and kind of adulthood and all that stuff, but I think definitely in Ireland she's regarded almost as a saint. And I think what she did for Irish music, how she communicated her emotions, how she brought herself to the world and her true self in a time where a lot of people were challenging her, I think she is an absolute inspiration to others to do the same. And Ethan, we've had numerous conversations about music. I'm a big music fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think between the connection to music, but also what she brought to the world, I think she was one in a million. One in a million.
Beautiful. I know whenever the Cranberries are playing down in the tourist district, the people who live there have to be more annoyed with it than I am, but it's like the sirens from the Greek Odyssey. I have to go. I can't resist it.
Love it. Yeah, love it. I've actually never seen them live, but they're on my list for sure.
Hey, Ryan?
So I'm currently drinking a local beer that is the green drink you might have noticed I've been having. And it is supposed to be a shamrock shake of a beer. And I want to ask you, is there any connection to mint in Ireland other than it just being green? Why is everything shamrock shake related here mint? I don't understand the connection there.
I don't either. Now I will say we also have shamrock shakes that are mint, so we have that too. But I don't know where that whole connection to mint and St. Patrick's Day came from. I think it's just because mint is usually colored green.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I've no idea either. No idea either.
I mean, it says on the back of this that it has notes of mint, cream, and shamrock to it, so it might be a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Now I know green obviously comes from Ireland, where I never thought Ireland was that green, like in terms of physically a country, until I moved to Canada, and I realized when you're flying into Calgary or whatever, you realize actually a lot of this is brown and you just a different environment over there. But when you fly over Ireland, you're like, oh, actually, there's a lot of green fields down there. So that's when you kind of realize, actually, yeah, no, we've got a lot of green over here.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Right, next one. Shane, when was the last time you sang "Come Out Ye Black and Tans"?
Oh, I was probably at a wedding a few years ago with far too many whiskeys in me. But that is a great song to sing at 4 o'clock in the morning once the wedding is over, but everybody is still up and not gone to bed yet. That's one of those songs that come out.
That's the time for it.
That's the time for it. That's the perfect time for it. You've all found yourself in a corner. For some reason, the room is probably massive, and you're actually slightly uncomfortable in how tightly packed in you are. But it doesn't matter. That's where as we would say, the crack is, and you're in there, and you just have loads of songs sang out of tune, and nobody wants the night to end. And you wake up the next morning and you regret everything.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know those nights.
Oh, yeah.
I so dearly love the singing culture out there. Music in Ireland is just so it's like part of the air.
Yeah, it's actually a part of me that I am disappointed is too strong of words, but I'm only recently started learning guitar, and up until that point I didn't really have any musical abilities. I started learning drums when I was a teenager, gave it up far too quickly to get any way good at them.
I don't know. You strike me as a good drummer. You just got a vibe of that.
Well, thank you. I'll take it. But no, you go to some Irish weddings. So there's a friend of mine who I went to university with. He's actually the godfather of my son, and he lives in Toronto now. So I don't get to see him as often as I would like. But his wife's family are so musical. And so when I was at their wedding, exactly kind of as I talked through, the wedding actually finishes, and it's only getting started. I found herself in a corner of the bar in the hotel that they got married in, and somebody brought out a guitar and a tin whistle, and it's those are the moments that you'll remember because you're around the people who you love, people you care about, people have a few drinks, so like barriers are down a little bit more, and when there's no drama, which sometimes look like everything, some people maybe don't get on, but in that particular wedding, everybody was friends, everybody got on, there was no drama, just good music, good fun, everybody singing, even if they don't know the words. It's brilliant.
That's one part that still sticks with me. I don't have time to drink as much as I used to because doing both this and the creative work takes so much time. But it's not like in America where you go to a bar to get drunk and this is like only for this group of people. It's such a communal thing that seems to extend even beyond the family to this generational thing. It's harder for me to put in words. I'm trying to find a way to share that, but that's one thing that still means a lot to me that I want to find a way to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that's where obviously, it being modern day, the legal drinking age over here is 18. Now, that's not to say that people only start when they're 18, but in the younger years, it very much is people go to a pub to get drunk and they go to a nightclub to get even more drunk. But as you get older, you kind of realize that actually that the fun in that kind of wears off as soon as you reach your mid-20s, maybe, or early 30s. And where the real memories come from, even throughout that period, is when you're in a situation where you are not in those situations. You're in a pub somewhere, just having a few drinks, having chats with people. And some of my favorite memories is there's an island off the coast of Donegal, which is in the northwest of Ireland, called Arranmore. And our police force is called on Garda Síochána. We call them the Guards. And there's no guards on the island. So the pubs stay open until everybody goes home. And so this started when we were in university, where every summer there would be a gang of us would go over to this island, Arranmore. You have to get a boat over. You can't drive. So when you're on, you can't get off. And we would go down to this pub called Jerry Early's. And Jerry Early was the man who owned the pub. And you could be talking to anybody. There'd be music playing. There would be either maybe like a teenager up doing a bit of a disco at the start, and then somebody brings out a guitar. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. And they are some of the most prized nights I will remember for my entire life. Not because we got absolutely, blind drunk, but because of the fact that, your friends are over there somewhere, but you don't care. You've met new friends for the night. And, you're just chatting to these random people about anything. And I can remember having a conversation for about 2 hours about, I don't know if either of you guys know the rapper MF Doom. And I'll never forget that. I was talking to some 17-year-old. I was maybe in my mid-20s at this stage, and age was not a thing. It's just we're just absolutely vibing over this rapper MF Doom and how brilliant he was. And yeah, I'll still remember. I'll remember that till the day I die.
Yeah, not sure how much of my background Ethan has shared with you before, Sean, but we met because I was a bartender at the spot where Ethan was getting his haircut, actually.
Right, okay.
So that was my favorite part about that job, was that I could get those amazing interactions in. Every night I'd go into work and I'd have no idea who I was going to see, what we were going to talk about, but I knew it was always going to be a great time.
Yeah, and I think those moments it's kind of like how we opened up this conversation, is that if you don't throw yourself into those, you don't know what you're going to miss. And maybe 9 times out of 10, it'll be nothing. Somebody doesn't want to talk, or, the conversation dies after 2 minutes. But every now and again, you get that one conversation where you're just like, that was worth it. That was worth it. And you don't know why. Like, you don't there's just something about it where you're like, that was just fun.
It gets addicting. It truly does.
Yeah.
I would bet that both of you are more naturally extroverted than I am. And I was really quite shy. I couldn't really talk to other people until I took my first trip to Ireland. And of all the places I've been in the world, it's just the best at that, and also the best at kind of gently bringing other people into it. So that is how I kind of began to learn. I don't think I'd be doing this right now, able to be on camera and talking with you guys if I hadn't done that.
Oh, well, I'm glad we had that impact on you, for sure.
There's still people that I talk to this day from my very first trip.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it.
So shut up about me. Tell us, the man wearing the gray hoodie looking mysterious mystique, how do you sell St. Patrick's Day? Like in general and you specifically? Because I know you got a kid, so your life isn't going to be like the normal. Let's tell us a little bit about it. What is Christmas?
Let me see. Where do I start? My favorite St. Patrick's Day was when I was 15 years old. It was the first St. Patrick's Day that I celebrated, not as a kid. And there was a few of us from my local high school who kind of just. So it's a public holiday here in Ireland. We call them bank holidays. So next Monday is obviously St. Patrick's Day. I don't have to go into work. There'll be no schools open. Everybody gets the day off, which is brilliant. But that was the first time where there was a fairground in town, so a mobile fairground, and we just kind of milled around town. And that's actually where I ended up meeting my first girlfriend on that particular day, on this St. Patrick's Day. So I'm actually, I've been reminiscing the last while. That's longer than I would care to admit ago, but every St. Patrick's Day that comes around, I still remember that day. But selling St. Patrick's Day probably gets a little bit of a bad rap in Ireland because a lot of people who are maybe less able to handle their drinks sometimes will get a little bit too drunk and rowdy, and you can get bars are absolutely swamped and cramped, and next thing you know, somebody gives you an elbow in the shoulder and they think that you're starting to fight with them, and sometimes it can be a little bit messy. So St. Patrick's Day in and of itself sometimes isn't held in that high regard over here. But it's only when you start talking to people who are from outside of Ireland, they're like, actually, this is a pretty special day. You're like, actually, do you know what it is? And so it's sometimes difficult to sell to Irish people, but for people who are coming in, it's absolutely about everything you've talked about so far, Ethan, in terms of from your trip. It's just go out and just talk to somebody and just have a chat. And that's something that Irish people are good. We would call it banter. It's like, just go out and have a bit of banter with somebody and just see what happens.
That actually finally makes it sense to my dense American brain. Every day is St. Patrick's Day in Ireland, so that day was just a day off.
Yeah,
and you went
exactly.
Off and did your thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
Girlfriend at 15. Good job, man.
There you go. Didn't last very long. I think it was 6 weeks.
15, that's like 10% of your life. That's good.
Listen, I thought I was punching above my weight as well, so I'll take that.
So just to go around the road, like what we're all going to do, there is a big Irish bar in Tennessee. And I think you're all familiar with it, but there's a lot of Irish heritage in Tennessee. Kentucky and Tennessee, the reason why we have so many redheads is because so many Irish people moved here. And it's also why we have a very good foundation of whiskey culture. And it's so big that they actually have to start drinking at 6 a.m. and they try to push people in and out every 60 minutes because there's so many people who want to go there.
Wow.
There'll be crazy stuff for people just go crazy, punk, drunk downtown, but this is kind of a historical site. It's a 2-story building. The owner is an Irish guy who moved over here to start his music business in Tennessee, became successful enough that he just retired, bought a building where he's like, I'm going to play my stuff whenever I want, whatever I want, however I want. And he just gets better every year. It's so beautiful to be around. So you walk in the room, every single person there, whether they're local, Irish, or what, is going to be singing every single word. The staff is stomping their hands along with the words, and it's just this.
That's almost the Irish definition of the American dream, isn't it? You leave hick old Ireland and you go over to the big bad America and you get your own bar, play your own music, drink all day. Oh, that's the Irish American dream there.
Yeah, Dirk McNamara, he made it.
Love it. McNamara is a very Irish name. That is an Irish name. Yeah.
How about you, Ryan?
I'm going to be working first thing in the morning, St. Patrick's Day, but that means I have the night off. So we'll see. I'm thinking I might go and hit up O'Shaughnessy Distilling here in town, which you might be familiar with a man who works there, Shane. They managed to convince Mr. Brian Nation to move to St. Paul, Minnesota.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's helping them out there now, and definitely has some good Irish whiskey that they're blending with some American bourbon and rye.
Wow, that's brilliant. I love when people do that. I genuinely love that. It's like just trying to take something to make it their own. I love it.
Love it. Send a link and we'll post some photos in the show notes. Send Shane. just take your kid and your beautiful lady out for a walk in the park, some time to relax. What's the plan?
Yeah, that's probably it. Yes, what are we doing? So we actually have one of my wife's friends who's coming over from Edinburgh to stay with us for a few days tomorrow. So we'll do a little bit of touring around while she's over, but then I'm actually going to see a comedy gig over the weekend with some friends. So and actually a fellow American, so Tom Segura. I don't know if you're aware. He's playing here in Ireland.
Yeah.
So it'll be my third time, I think, to see him. So I'm really looking forward to that. So on Monday, which is St. Patrick's Day, we'll probably just be a little bit R&R, go for a little bit of a walk. It's meant to be quite sunny here. There's a local coffee shop that we quite like, and yeah, we'll just take it easy and just relax.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to talk about your content creation while we still have you with us.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many dimensions to Shane that we got to kind of slice out pieces, but this is the next logical one for us to know. Just tell us a quick overview, and then I have some questions to get deeper into certain parts, but just you tell it best about yourself.
So the content creation side actually came accidentally, where I had started doing some life coaching as partially to generate some income, but also partially to try and hone my skills, as we kind of talked about earlier, in terms of what it means to be a good leader and to coach people, and having a passion for trying to help as many people as possible. And I think I've actually found myself in a space where, again, not like the blow smoke on my own backside here, but the life I've created between me and my wife and obviously my son is, I think it's unfortunately rare in that we're incredibly happy. And I think the level of happiness that we have isn't quite common. But to achieve that, I think it would be significantly easier for most people than they realize. And it's just because they're aiming for things that they think they want, because either society or their upbringing or labels that their parents or family have put on them that they have to achieve means that they actually never feel as happy or successful, whatever that means for them, until it's too late. And so I kind of got to a point where actually I think this is easier than a lot of people think it might be. So let's try and help people. And as I was going through coaching, I kind of realized that that is positive, but it's limited in the sense of you're only talking to one person at a time. And so the next obvious step was, well, actually, if a lot of this is applicable to people without the need for an actual one-to-one coach, well, then actually let's just start making YouTube videos to try and just share as much information as possible. And that's kind of just how it started. I had a number of years ago made I call them vlogs, but they were more like, I'm going to say art pieces. Art pieces probably isn't but there was no story. I wasn't talking over them. It was just like an interesting kind of video of loads of cuts of what I was doing in my day. And I found that I actually really liked making videos. And so when I decided then what medium would I choose, the medium of video kind of made sense to me. Now, obviously, when you're starting to look down the barrel of a gun or a camera, you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. But that challenge kind of also almost excited me in a sense of, okay, well, if I don't know how to make a good video that people will watch, that's an opportunity for me to learn and develop as well. And who knows what will come from that. And so it kind of became the obvious step. Then as time went on and my wife became pregnant and kind of time was starting to get a little bit more precious, I had a choice as to whether to stick with the coaching, one-to-one coaching direction, or just go all in on YouTube. And actually I made the decision then to stop taking on new clients and just go 100% into YouTube. Now that's not a long-term decision, but it's just at the moment when time is tight and you kind of have to make those choices. It felt easy where it felt like the easier one, because there's a potential there to help more people going that route, even if it's only getting them started and you can't bring them the whole way, but at least you're kind of getting them thinking potentially differently than they were before. And so that since then it became an obvious decision to make.
So you made the choice for what would have the most benefit for other people.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
I like that rationale. That's a great reason to get into it. And that's kind of what drew me to this as well, was I was trying to get more into the educational side of the industry, teaching people about whiskey at the bar. And it's great, but at most, the bar had probably 13 seats, Ethan?
Yep.
So
we packed more, but
we could pack in a few more, but still, I could only get so many people at a time, and most of the time it was all my regulars. No one knew. So and I eventually realized I need to get these stories out there to more people. I need to start trying to spread the good word out. And absolutely, content creation is the right way to reach the masses.
Yeah, and I think when you think about how people kind of go about their lives these days, podcasts in particular, I think, are a very good medium to do that, because like I'll go for a walk with my son. He's only 5 months old, so he can't really talk. He'll usually very, very quickly fall asleep. So what happens? Headphones go in. I listen to a podcast. That's what I do, and I don't have a huge amount of free time to consume content. A little bit will be YouTube, but the vast majority of it is going to be podcasts. And I think a huge amount of where I am now is because of podcasts that I've listened to. So some of them are absolutely just for entertainment, and it's just for fun. You got 20 minutes, you want to just unwind. There's nothing wrong with that. But a huge amount of the podcasts that I've listened to have been hugely educational for me, and they've completely changed how I think about the world and what options I have in front of me, and how my mind thinks. And I think podcasts are in their own kind of category or genre when it comes to that, because it's unfiltered. You don't know what you're going to get. And because of that, you end up getting a lot more positive than you would from, let's say, a TV show on the same topic, because you've got people who you have to keep happy in terms of the producers and the people who are paying for it and all that good stuff. And when you remove all that, you tend to get to the true heartfelt conversations a lot quicker. And I think that's a huge benefit of a podcast.
Yeah, completely agree on that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you developed your skills? Anything you studied or practiced or self-taught?
I'd initially started doing a lot of just give it a go, and that's kind of my approach to everything. Is that historically I used to push for perfection, and it might have actually been a podcast where I heard the term that perfection is the enemy of good enough, which I think is a Seth Godin quote, if I can give him some attribution there. But it's when I heard that, then I was like, actually, do you know what? The quickest way to learn something is just give it a go, finish it, look back and say, okay, what are you not happy with? Pick one thing and try and make that thing better the next time around. Now, I did find that very, very quickly with making videos, I kind of reached a little bit of a plateau, in a sense of it was almost overwhelmed with, there's so much here that I know isn't good. I don't even know where to start. And it was at that stage then where I started Googling and came across PCYA, so Part-Time YouTuber Academy, which is led by a YouTuber called Ali Abdal. And I had watched Ali Abdal's videos, and that's kind of how I came to know it. And
so that was your first course?
That was my first course, yeah. First and only course.
Good.
Now, first and only YouTube course. I have done 2 other courses that I think have been helpful. One of them is, 3 other courses. One of them is Eric Partaker, who's an author who wrote, oh my God, his book is, I'm drawing a blank on his book. But he's got a very, very good book. His name is Eric Partaker. I'd recommend people go out and give it a shot. But I did his course on productivity. I then also did Vin Gan, who's a public speaker, his communication course. But I also did locally with a personal coach 1-to-1. I did a speech coaching coach, in the sense of teaching me how to speak a little bit more nuanced and learning how to present a little bit better.
The speech coach? Who was that?
That was a local lady called Marie. Oh my God, her name is gone for me. She actually does a lot of work with high school students, because you can actually do public speaking as part of one of your final exams in high school, which is called the Leaving Cert, which is you get points allocated depending on how well you do. It's kind of like the SATs, maybe, I think, if my understanding of the SATs is correct.
Wait. Hold the train up. You're telling me that in Ireland, students get a grade for how good they can speak? They can
be one of the subjects that they pick. Yeah. Now, it's not very common. I don't know of any high school that actually does it in the school. It would be almost extracurricular. But some students decide to go for it. And so she actually teaches them. And so I just did, again, a bit of Googling. I was looking for something in person. And it turns out she was a 4-minute walk away from where I was living at the time. I was like, this is perfect. And so I did 6 or 8 weeks with her to try and just improve we ended up landing on my presentation skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually the first course I had taken. And then I realized actually that opened up, that all that left me with was, and nothing against her, I think it's just in you only have so much that you can cover in 8 weeks, but it kind of just left me realizing that there was more questions than answers. And that's when I went into the Vin Gan Stage Academy Stage Academy course, which, if anybody is in a position where they're looking to get better at speaking, do it. It is brilliant. It is brilliant.
I made 2 episodes on our podcast basically about that course.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. It's incredible. I've used that so many times in work, and so we actually, it's quite funny. I used his framework pretty much exactly about when I was halfway through the course. We had a leadership away day for all the leaders in the distillery, and I opened up with a story. And as Ethan, you'll know, it's like the reason why I'm telling you this is, and it seems like the
Mm-hmm.
story has absolutely nothing got to do with work or anything that you're going to talk about. So people, I could just see them leaning forward in their seat, and I'm like, oh my God, this actually works. This stuff works.
It's fucking magic.
And so now I've got my story bank built up. I've got loads of different tidbits that you can pull from, but it's just, I think it's again, similar to the stuff that I try and teach people, is that a lot of this stuff isn't rocket science, but if you don't know it, you don't know it. And you just need
No,
someone to be able to coach you through it and just kind of, okay, now that you know and you start applying, and yes, there's practice involved to get better at it, but once you know what some of the answers to your problems are, all of a sudden they're not problems anymore. They're just things that you're trying to get better at. And that just opens up so many avenues in front of you.
So love all of these. From all of the things that you studied and learned, could you tell, like, does anything come to mind that was really difficult for you to get over the hump on?
I don't know if this is really answering your question, Ethan, but not from anything that I learned. But I had a little bit of a moment when I moved back from Canada, which kind of completely changed the trajectory of my life, where that woman who I had moved over to Canada with, we had broken up. It's partially one of the reasons why I came home. Now, another one was because I ran out of money. I won't lie. So that's a reason to come home. But I was sitting in Dublin Airport, having flew from Calgary to Toronto, Toronto to London Heathrow, and then London Heathrow to Dublin. And in the trip from Heathrow to Dublin, my luggage got lost. My entire life was in this luggage. Like, I had brought, like, everything was gone.
Rock
Now,
bottom,
it wasn't lost. It just happened to be it was on the next flight. And when I went up to talk to the lady at the help desk, she was like, "Oh yeah, no, it's not lost. It's on the next flight." And I was like, "Well, how did that happen?" She goes, "Oh, some people's luggage gets put on the next flight as if it's a normal thing." And I'm like, "Okay." And she goes, "Well, you've got two options. We can either send it to you, and it could take 10 business days to get to you, or you can hang around. The next flight's coming in 4 hours' time." And I was like, "Well, that's my entire life. I'm going to just hang around and sit in the airport." So I sit in the airport, and I was just waiting for my bags to come in, and I was just thinking about life. And then next thing you know, my phone dies, so I don't have a podcast to listen to, and you're just left there with your own thoughts.
Wow.
And I'd been thinking up until that point, this relationship I was in was 9 years long and just broken down. I was coming home, no money, unemployed, having to go back live with my mum. I was like, right, this doesn't feel like, I think it was 26 at the time, or 27. I was 26, I think. And I was like, something doesn't feel right. I'm absolutely working my backside off here, and it feels like I'm back to square one. So something's not right. And at the time, I had just finished 2 books. One of them was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yep.
And the other one was, oh my God, the other one is actually, I'm drawing a blank on it. Yeah.
I was reading that book when I got back from Ireland and was figuring out what the heck to do with my life.
No way. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm sorry, the other one was So Good They Can't Ignore You. Which, if any of your listeners haven't read either of those books, highly recommend it. But I had just basically finished those books. I'd finished both of them on the plane. Not that I read both of them in the journey. I tend to read a couple of books at one time, and I ended up happened to finish both of them on the plane trip home. And I was like, okay, my life is going to be different now. I'm going to approach it differently. I'm going to approach it as not afraid to ask any stupid questions, not afraid to go and just throw myself into things that I'm afraid of. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, is that up until that point, I had been avoiding things that made me nervous or anxious or that I was afraid of. And I just said, from this point on, enough is enough. And about maybe 4 months later, I got the job in the bottling hall, and I brought that approach into my job there, in the sense of, okay, I'm coming in and nobody's looking after who's going to do the rota for the bottling hall. Okay, I'm going to take that on. That's going to mean I'm going to have difficult conversations about coming in on back shift or early shift, and they might not want to, but I'm doing it because I'm scared of it. It's not my job. I don't have to do it, but I'm terrified of doing that, but I'm going to do it anyway. And there's a number of different things in that kind of aspect I had done, and that ultimately led to when I was sitting down in the interview, and they were like, "Why do you think you should deserve the job?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I'm doing half of it already." So, it kind of just maybe makes sense. Now, obviously, the interview is more complicated than that, but they tended to agree. And then when I got that next job, and you're doing one-to-ones with people and you're leading a team, that terrified me. And I was like, right, okay, well, just jump in. And it was that moment sitting in Dublin Airport. I could still go and point out the exact seat I was sitting in. And it was that moment where I realized I'm tired of working so hard and getting nowhere. And I couldn't tell you what was holding me back before. It's probably because I was pushing for something that I didn't really want,
Mm,
in the sense of, the flash car, the big house, the high
mm,
salary, the status. And as soon as I kind of let those go, I'm not saying I have them now, but I'm significantly closer to them than I am now than I ever would have gotten going before. And it's just by letting go of those and just saying, okay, there's a problem in front of me. How do I best overcome this problem? And how do I best develop myself to not just develop myself for the sake of developing myself, but so that I could be a better person able to help those around me?
mm,
Everything just became so much easier. And okay, so not maybe a course or a coaching that I received, but definitely I think from reading those two books at the right time
mm.
was a huge reason for that. And if there's one thing I would always recommend to people, would be read books. You're getting somebody's entire life experience in 300 pages. And if that's not worth $15, I don't know what is.
I understand much better now why your time in Canada means so much to you.
Yeah, it means a huge amount. I actually have a Canadian maple leaf tattooed on my arm here.
No fucking way.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
gotta see
among
it,
other
man.
things. But between the people I met, so Sandro, who we talked about earlier, is one, but there's another chap, Nick, who I've completely fallen in touch with, but out of touch with. But there you go. Canadian maple leaf.
Bro.
There you go. It's upside down, but
1234.
Club 24 is actually that's another nod of the cap to that ex-girlfriend actually. So when we broke up, things got quite sour for quite a while, as things tend to do in breakups. Now
Mm,
we're civil now, but we don't see each other very often. But when we do, we like catching up and everything's hunky dory. But when we were very much in love, one of the things that we would see quite regularly is the time 1, 2, 3, 4 on the clock. And every time we did, we would text one another 1, 2, 3, 4 X. And I actually got that tattoo after we broke up. And everybody's like, what? You got a tattoo about your ex-girlfriend? Are you crazy? But the reasoning behind it was, at the time, all those good memories that we had together was getting tainted by this bad breakup mood that was between us. And I didn't want to forget the fact that I would not be the person who I am today without the
mm,
positives that she brought. And so that 1, 2, 3, 4 isn't a nod to my ex-girlfriend in particular, but it's more so it's trying to remember the fact that relationships will come and go in our life. And sometimes they will go in a way that we're not happy with, but always be grateful for the good times that come from those relationships and never let them go. And so that's what the tattoo means. So that's what 1, 2, 3, 4 means.
man, I resonate with that so much. I'm not going to say anything about it on the episode that's about you, but man, that's
Yeah,
great. Uh, Thank you for sharing this, man.
no problem. No problem. Now, I've not actually, and speaking of jumping into things feet first, one thing that I am still afraid of is asking my ex-girlfriend what she thinks of it, because she knows I have it and she knows obviously what it means. But I've
Mhm.
never actually got the opportunity to ask, what's your thoughts on me getting that after we broke up? I don't know if it would be, I don't know what she would think of it, but that's something that hopefully one day I'll get the opportunity to ask.
Mm-hmm. You're solid in what it means to you, so that sounds like a safe thing to do.
Yeah. It was my first tattoo too. Yeah.
How did you find the winters in Canada?
Loved them. Loved them.
Ah,
I'm a cold bird by nature. So there was one night I was walking home from the gym and it was -40 out and I loved it. I loved it.
Mm.
all right. We can trade places anytime. I'm in Minnesota, so we're finally hitting 70 on Friday, and I'm so excited for it. And I just know we're gonna get hit with another snowstorm before March is over, though.
Oh, I love it. I love this. I
Oh,
love the cold weather. I love the snow. I love the snow.
Okay, let me ask the next question. Like recently, we were having a conversation among some of my creator friends, Ryan, Cory, and they were talking about putting something together. And Cory referred to me as, like, oh, Ethan should do this part because he's the writing expert out of us. And as much as I know that is a kindness from a friend trying to be nice, that was probably the happiest I felt in months and that made me realize that is the thing I want to be my specialty.
Right.
Everybody has a different strength. There's so many different ways to be good at creating. What do you feel your strength is? The way that you're making things good?
I think it's one of two things. I think the first one is being able to break things down into processes. So complex things down into processes. That might be somebody's life or something in engineering. I think I'm very, very good at that. But I think the other piece is helping people get to a point where they make realizations about themselves that they didn't even know was existing in the background.
So good concept, getting to the real point instead of some tangent.
Yeah, but I think at an emotional level, more so specifically, what I mean. So actually, I have one coaching client at the moment. It's actually a friend, who's just in a spot where she's looking for a little bit of coaching. We did our first session last week, and when we left it, she was like, "This felt like therapy." And that's not to say that I'm not a licensed therapist. I've no qualifications in that whatsoever. But she just said the questions you asked me made me think about things that I didn't even know I needed to think about. And I think that's one thing that I'm quite good at. And I think if you can get to a position as a person where you're able to do that with people, I think you inadvertently allow people to make their lives happier because you're allowing them access to think about the things that are potentially holding them back and they don't even know it. So I would like to think I'm good at that. Whether other people would agree or not, I don't know. But I would like to think I'm good at that.
I do feel that comes across in your videos.
Well, thank you. That's an incredibly kind thing to say, Ethan. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that.
Ryan, I'd like to ask you the same question too, because you clearly are the actual writing expert in my friend circle. What would you say your strengths are in content?
Man, you have taken more writing courses than I ever will at this point. You just need to have the confidence behind it when saying you're the writing expert.
I'm catching up to you, motherfucker.
Oh, you absolutely have. You are able to put things that I'm doing into words. The thing with how I was taught writing was a guy who could not tell you how to do things. He would just tell you, this is shit, do better. And then I'd go back to him a year later, and he'd say, this is less shit, do better still. And I did this about 4 times to get to where he finally said, yeah, that's okay. So you can absolutely put things into words and explain to people. You can teach them. I can't do that. That's not how I was taught. But what I think my specialty is I can take decent, good writing, and I will put a weird flavor to it where all of a sudden it's Vincent van Gogh drinking absinthe, and now the world looks like a different hue. That is how I approach things.
So can I ask a question here then for Ethan based on what you've just said there, Ryan? Given you've got that feedback from Ethan, do you think, or what do you think is causing the imposter syndrome, I guess, in yourself? That's for you, Ethan.
For me?
That's for you, yeah.
I can answer that pretty easy. Ryan's episode on Captain Morgan. It is brief, it doesn't go on tangents, and it feels like you lived a life and learned the wisdom of a hero. I can't tell you how much it feels like so much happens in such a short period of time. And it would be one thing if it was like Ryan talked about it, like he talked about the whiskey tasting I put together, where I agonized over for months writing it. And Ryan will say, like, yeah, you know, it was nice. I could do better. I don't really understand why I did this or that. It's his natural thing. If he studied the way I studied, he would be a freaking Nobel Prize winner.
Again, this is annoying. I can't tell you what to do or what not to do. I can just say, this is the weird spin I took here.
Seriously, check out that episode if you ever get a chance. It's a fun ass episode, but it's based on history, so you actually get something out of it.
Love it.
All right, so moving on to be respectful of time. Shane, tell me a little about who are your favorite creators and favorite content, things that maybe we should go check out to get a little more about, you know, just good taste.
Favorite creators are, I would gravitate, when you ask me that question, I would gravitate towards YouTube. And there's one guy who makes they're very nerdy engineering videos. but he puts a twist on it where it's almost like a creative video as well. But it's a guy called This Old Tony on YouTube.
I've brought
Yes,
him up
Ryan,
on
you've
here
heard of him.
before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Did we watch
yeah.
some clips on one of our episodes, Ryan?
I don't think we've seen any clips on here, but I've definitely brought him up, and I've sent links to you and Cory of his.
Yeah, so I love him. He's absolutely
Oh,
brilliant. So I love that. But let me see if I can think of anybody new to give you. Oh, there is one. But I can't remember his name. Give me 2 seconds here.
Your eyes are so big right
Uh,
now. This is gonna be great.
oh, he's a musician. Uh,
trying to think of musicians that have that entertainment, but yet probably engineering, knowing you. And the only one I can think of is Winter Garden.
No, oh yeah, oh yes, very much enjoy that. Oh my God, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. Uh, he's got a song called "Is It Up Your Butthole?" Up your butt. Tom Cardy.
Okay.
Tom Cardy.
I would highly recommend. They're really short songs. They're like a minute and a half long. But the creativity side in that, in terms of he's making YouTube videos, he's got different cuts in it, the musical creativity, the songwriting. Yeah, if you've heard of This Old Tony, still recommend him. But if you're looking for something new, Tom Cardy is top-notch music.
Yeah, I'll look him up, man. Thank you.
Love it.
Okay, last question for the day. If you had unlimited time and unlimited budget to make a piece of content, what would you make?
I don't know how I would make it, which I suppose is where the unlimited time would come in. But I would make either a video or a video series that would allow people to figure out exactly what they want in life. Because I think if people could truly get to what that is, they would realize that that is significantly closer to where they are now for the vast majority of people. And happiness then would only be a couple of years, if not a handful of months away. And I think people push so hard for things that they don't want to impress people that they don't like, that they end up getting caught in this cycle where they're pushing and pushing and pushing for something that they don't want. And next thing they're 60 and retired and realize that this isn't the life I wanted. And I actually wanted something much simpler, and they've wasted their whole life trying to get there. I think that is incredibly sad. So if I had unlimited time and unlimited money, I don't know how I would do it, but I would create some kind of video series which would allow people to get to that point significantly quicker.
That's beautiful, man. Love it. All right, let's wrap up there. Are you open to taking coaching clients right now? Is that an open door?
Yes and no. I no is probably the answer, but that's to say if people are interested, definitely get them to reach out. Best place to reach me is probably via my YouTube channel. There's links to my Instagram and everything on that. But Shane Carberry on YouTube is where you get me. And if somebody feels like that they actually really, really need some support, we can absolutely get a call going. I don't have a huge amount of time to dedicate to coaching at the moment, just with the wee man and running the distillery. But if I can help anybody, be that one-to-one coaching or not, just get people to reach out. And yeah, happy to do anything I can do to
So
help.
if someone really liked hearing you today and they just wanted to support you, the number one thing for them to do would be go to your YouTube channel and check that out.
Yep. And if it's a case of to find something that's not ticking the box there, my email is on there too. They can send me, can you make a video about this? Or can we get a quick call about that? That's cool too.
All right. We'll put links in the show notes. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I'm real glad to just know you, Shane. You're a great guy to have in my life. And I'm thrilled that I got to share you with a little bit more people today.
No, thank you very much, Ethan. And look, Ryan, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's obviously our first time talking, but Ethan, I have to say thank you for reaching out. I think, yeah, it goes both ways. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last few months. And yeah, thanks for your time today, gentlemen. Really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure meeting you.
If anyone survived the drunkenness of St. Patrick's Day, let us know how your day went. Bye.